traumatic memories from popcorn reading in middle school. And we're not going to explore those traumas tonight. So I'm just going to read, and then we're going to kind of cite, everyone's laughing. So I know you all have the same trauma. It's fine. It's fine. Okay. So I'm going to read and then we're going to stop. I would say, I don't want everyone to reveal it, but as I'm reading the first paragraph, if you have a little inkling for what type of passage we're reading, if it's informative, persuasive, or cost benefit, just put it in the chat, send it as a direct message. Actually, just send it to the group. Let's be wild tonight. Don't look at the chat if you haven't put anything in, but write what you think, what your senses are telling you. Okay. Medical practitioners are ethically required to prescribe the best available treatments. In ordinary patient-physician interactions, this obligation is unproblematic. But when physicians are clinical researchers in comparative studies of medical treatments, special issues arise. Comparative clinical trials involve withholding one or more of the treatments from at least one group of patients. Traditionally, most physicians and ethicists have agreed that in testing a new treatment on a patient population for which there exists a currently accepted treatment, the participating physician should have no opinion as to which treatment is clinically superior, a state of mind usually termed equipoise. Equipoise, sure. Okay, if you have an inkling of what type it is, type it in the chat. It's still not completely clear to me. I have an inkling, but let's read on to that second paragraph, and I'm going to stop after the second sentence because by then we need to figure out what's going on. Unfortunately, the conception of equipoise that is typically employed, which I will term theoretical equipoise, may be too strict. Theoretical equipoise exists only when the overall evidence for each of the two treatment regimens is judged by each clinical researcher to be exactly balanced and ideal, hardly attainable in practice. Okay, we very clearly have a stance, so put your guesses in the chat. You have 1 minute. Okay. So we're seeing a pretty even split between a lot of cost benefit, some persuasive.
Can you scroll up, Katie, so that we can see the first paragraph and the first two
Yes.
sentences? Thank you.
Ooh, we're seeing, okay, no one thinks informative. That's good. That's good. Okay. At 8:52, I'm going to call it. Okay, it's 8:52. If you didn't put your answer in the chat, that's okay. I know you have one in your heart. So again, when we're looking at the difference between persuasive versus cost benefit, we're going to have information on both sides. So our author is more neutral. And then we're going to get like information that's kind of explaining why it's good. We're going to get information explaining why it's not so great. In a persuasive, we're going to have a common opinion, and then the author is going to take a specific stance that goes against that opinion. So for those of us that chose persuasive, can someone be very, very brave and tell me the sentence where we have our common herd that we're going against? Because we need that. We need to have some sort of statement about this is the common belief. No, we need like we need our man that we're trying to stick it to for persuasive. So someone who chose persuasive, just turn on your mic. We'll just be very chaotic tonight and read me that sentence.
Unfortunately, the conception of equipoise that is typically employed is maybe too strict.
Yeah. So that's the author's opinion that's going against the common herd. And this one, you kind of get bonus consensus because we have the conception of equipoise that is typically employed. And then we also have the statement up here that says, traditionally, most physicians and ethicists have agreed in testing a new treatment. So this is the persuasive argument. The author is going against theoretical equipoise. So can someone give me a very eloquent sentence that states the author's goal? Something of the point to, the purpose of this passage is to persuade us that insert persuasive point. Someone turn on your mic, be brave, be articulate. It's 8:54 p.m. Nothing you say will be wrong. Wait, no, not that. But like whatever you guess will be fine. It's a safe space. If no one speaks, I'm just gonna awkwardly dance until 9 o'clock.
Just to jump in here while people are thinking, I love that people picked up on that, unfortunately. And if you're strong in LR, think about what happens when you're reading an LR stimulus and we are reading a stimulus and halfway through it uses the word unfortunately. Don't you see like, oh, opinion of others, unfortunately, contrasts. I'm like, ooh, let's treat it that way for those that are struggling to pick up on that a little bit.
Yeah. I also feel like with persuasive, it's Nicole, I don't know if you said it or if Akarshna said it, but it's that like super common LR sandwich where it's like, Johnny says that dogs are great. There's lots of studies that say dogs are great. However, dogs are smelly. Like that's
many things that they are not considering. Like
right. Like, however, they're like that's our comment of like, here's what the world believes, or here's what like most people, but that's wrong. Like that LR sandwich that we usually find our conclusion is, that's essentially persuasive. They just took that and they like added a few more boring sentences, and then they're like, here you go, here's a passage. Great. Okay. So if I were writing this down and if I were doing my untimed RC practice, what I would write at the top of my paper is the author's going, or the purpose of this passage is to persuade us that theoretical equipoise is too strict. Simple as that.
And what Katie just did there is just like a main conclusion question, right? So in LR, what she did is just narrow that in. It's a lot, like she said, a lot more sentences. But whenever when we're doing main conclusion questions, we're saying what is the purpose, or what is the author trying to convince you of? That's exactly how she made it so easy there.
So, and it is overwhelming because this is, I mean, who wants to be reading a whole passage about theoretical equipoise? Absolutely no one. Well, no, that's too generic of a statement. Don't want to have a flaw, but I'm sure there might be one person, but for the most part, we've got to find a way to activate it and find things to look for, because like theoretical equipoise is not it. Okay, next one. Unfortunately, the conception of equipoise that is typical. Oh, before we go, so now when we're reading the second paragraph, we have our goal. We have our purpose that the author is trying to persuade us that theoretical equipoise, it's too much. It's too strict. It's not great. So now every additional paragraph we read before we move on, we've got to figure out what is this paragraph doing to advance that goal. Unfortunately, the conception of equipoise that is typically employed, which I will term theoretical equipoise, may be too strict. Theoretical equipoise exists only when the overall evidence for each of two treatment regimens is judged by each clinical researcher to be exactly balanced, an ideal hardly attainable in practice. Clinical researchers commonly have some preference for one of the treatments being tested, an intuitive preference perhaps, or one based on their interpretation and balancing of various sources of evidence. Even if researchers judged the evidence to be balanced at the start of a comparative clinical trial, such a balance would be extremely fragile, liable to be tipped by small accretions, who knows, of evidence as the study progresses. Consequently, if the standard of theoretical equipoise is adhered to, few comparative clinical trials could commence and even fewer could proceed to completion. Fabulous. Okay, so can anyone be very, very brave this Wednesday night at 8:58 p.m. if you're in the Eastern time zone? If you're not, then whatever your time zone is. Can anyone be very brave and tell me what, in like one beautiful sentence, what is this paragraph doing to advance our goal of persuading us that theoretical equipoise is too strict? What did it do?
It's kind of explaining further why it's like not attainable.
Yeah. That's perfect. It's not attainable. And then just for the sake of, because we have all the time in the world right now, I mean, I set the timer for 350 minutes. So, I mean, we can really just be as detailed as we want. So, and why isn't it attainable?
Because doctors or physicians or researchers always like have a preference, and if they don't have a preference when they begin, they eventually have one. They're like tipped as they begin to get evidence.
Yeah, so it's not attainable. It's not attainable because it exists only when the overall evidence is exactly balanced. Like how would that happen? So if I was writing this on paper, I would just say this paragraph advances the goal of persuading us that theoretical equipoise is too strict by proving it is unattainable. But essentially, so like it's as simple as that. Like you just need to know like what this paragraph did. And if we wanted to add more detail, we could say it's only successful if completely balanced, balance not attainable. If you're someone who just wants to like jot down words and not make beautiful sentences, because that's fine too. Wonderful. Okay, so next one. These difficulties associated with theoretical equipoise suggest that a different notion of equipoise should be developed, one that I will label clinical equipoise. Great, so if at this point we maybe wanted to change our overall point of the passage, because now we have a twist. It's not only that the author hates theoretical equipoise, but he's like, this one's terrible, but here's a better solution. So we still have that he thinks theoretical equipoise is too strict, but we can maybe add like pro clinical equipoise. So this is where like we know that he likes clinical equipoise, or her. We don't know their gender. It. Yes, Nicole?
We also hear, so when we have that transition where we kind of had our point and now we're saying we should do something, what is this similar to as an LR? Kind of when we have a main point and then we advance it.
Necessary.
Janice is the closest with conclusion. What kind of conclusion? Subsidiary, yeah, right? Like we kind of sometimes have we come to a subsidiary conclusion, and then when we advance it and say, so we should do something, that's kind of like moving to that main conclusion, right?
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm making all the analogies tonight.
No, it's perfect. I think it's like learning logical reasoning, I think feels better because there's more structure, there's more resources in place. I feel like a lot of time books or tutors are like, okay, here's a reading comp passage, read it. Like that's not a strategy. And it's scary because like reading comp, I think like there's not as many like concrete things to do. So if you can bring it down to concrete terms and concrete things you're looking for, it just makes it a little more attainable. So absolutely, like there's so many parallels with LR. They just have to phrase it and make it as goofy and horrible as possible because it's RC and LSAT like knows we hate it. So it takes specific joy in making it as confusing and annoying as possible. But we will not fall for it. Okay. Clinical equipoise would impose rigorous ethical standards on comparative clinical trials without unreasonably constricting them. One reason for conducting comparative clinical trials is to resolve a current or imminent conflict in the expert clinical community, lots of C's, over what treatment is to be preferred for patients with a given illness. It could be that the standard treatment is A, but new evidence suggests that B will be superior. Medical experts may be divided as to which treatment is better, with each side recognizing the opposing experts can differ honestly in their interpretation of the evidence. Fabulous. Okay, so what did this paragraph do in achieving the author's goal of persuading us that theoretical equipoise is not it?
I'll go again if nobody else wants to answer.
Yeah.
So it gave us a reason why it's good.
Yeah.
Without unreasonably constricting them.
Yeah. So offers another solution, and this one, people are allowed to have different opinions. Like you're allowed to like one thing more than the other. So there's just like more leeway. So it gives us an alternative suggestion Fabulous. And that's that. Easy peasy. We don't have to write a whole paragraph. We don't have to recite a Tropicana speech about everything we learned. Like, we're just really looking for what happened and what did it do to achieve our goal. Fabulous. In our last paragraph, the very absence of consensus within the expert clinical community is what makes clinical equipoise possible. One or more of the comparative clinical trials' researchers may have a decided treatment preference based on their assessments of the evidence, but that is no ethical bar to participation in the trial. The clinical researchers must simply each recognize that their less favored treatment is preferred by a sizable constituency within the medical profession as a whole. Wonderful. What did this last paragraph do, someone other than Brittany, to to advance our goal of persuading us that theoretical equipoise is not it? My cat was biting me, so he's coming up. Hi, everyone. This is Beans. Going once. There are no wrong answers. There are only answers that I'll say, I like that. Anything else? Yeah, so what did this final paragraph do? Oh, the goal of the third paragraph. The third paragraph introduced an alternative to the current method. And that method was better because it didn't require consensus. Beans, get it together. You're on camera. He's very long.
I guess
So the answer we're looking for now is what? Oh my gosh, you're embarrassing yourself. The answer we're looking for now is what is the final paragraph doing to achieve the author's goal of persuading us that theoretical equipoise is too strict?
Once you have an idea, just go ahead and put it in the chat.
Yeah, the clinical trials.
Yeah.
So what specifically about the clinical trials with this new method make it better than theoretical equipoise? You're on the right track.
Is it that there's like no restriction if we give it the clinical equipoise like title? There's no like restrictions as if it was like theoretical. Is that what you're trying to say?
Because in theoretical, there's less restrictions. Perfect Kamani, perfect Christine, same consensus. Absolutely, Brittany. So in theoretical, no one can have, like, everything has to be balanced. Like, no one can have a bias walking in. We have to have agreement. Whereas in the other one, it resolves the conflict. So it's more proof. Allowing the absence of consensus in this new method makes it attainable. So the issue with our first one was that it was unattainable because it's impossible to have everything be perfectly balanced. This next one, it's less strict. It allows for some disagreements in the community, and that's okay. Perfect. So because this was persuasive, like, it was pretty easy to figure out our author's tone. Like, our author is very clearly all for, yes, the author very clearly is all for clinical equipoise. It feels like this is too strict, and it's anti, like, everyone needs to be on the same page. Like, it's okay to have differences. Fabulous. So we're slowly running out of time. So I want to open up the floor for any final questions. But just to kind of show you, in case you were not a believer, like, let's see how our like guesstimated purpose translates to the questions, just to kind of see like how this looks like when we're answering questions. So we said that the author's purpose was to persuade us that theoretical equipoise is too strict. And then from there, like, if we maybe wanted to add like something about an alternative method, maybe, but for our main point, we're looking for something that touches on everything. And so the fact that theoretical equipoise is too strict is the better answer. So I don't think there's a way that I can make it to where you're going to see all the answers, But just reading through these,
Katie, where it has like the AA on the top, can you make this font smaller?
is that,
It's not quite perfect, but
yeah. Okay, so if that's our prediction of what the purpose is, we're looking for something about persuading us that the one method is too strict. We've got explain the difference between two conceptions of an ethical standard together with how these conceptions would affect comparative clinical trials. Was this a compare contrast essay? Like, were we comparing two methods? No, we were saying one method's bad, here's a better method. Gone. Argue for a more reasonable, less restrictive interpretation of an ethical requirement than the one traditionally given by ethicists and physicians. Look at this. That's what we predicted, persuading us that the current Mandy, I'm gonna come back to your question, don't worry. Yeah, that's essentially what we predicted. The author's trying to persuade us that the current method's too strict. Boom. Primary purpose of the second paragraph. Well, we learned that the primary purpose of the second paragraph when we're predicting is that it's only works if we have complete balance. That's not attainable. So let's see if we can find something that essentially says it requires something and explains like why that's not possible. Provide a view that contrasts with arguments in favor of clinical equipoise. No, we didn't even know about clinical equipoise until the third paragraph. Explore the factors underlying physicians' preference regarding competing treatments. Do we care about competing physicians' view on treatments? No. Undermine the moral principle that underlies the theory of theoretical equipoise. Are we undermining the moral principle? Like, are we trying to say why, like, on its basis, from a moral perspective, like, it's not attainable? No, but that's closer. Like, we're looking for something that says it's not possible. State the main difficulty with adhering to the standards of theoretical equipoise. Yeah, it's not possible. Illustrate the conflicts inherent in the general notion of equipoise. No, we're not saying equipoise is bad. Okay, Nicole got it. Yeah, so as we can see, like, doing all this work does translate well. When we've gotten according to the passage, that's when we're going to have to use our control or command F. So that's where, because we're looking for like pretty verbatim, like we've got to find some good proof in the passage. And then which of the following is true? What type of LR question is this? If we're looking for something that is true. Yeah, it must be true. Perfect. And so we're going to use the same techniques. We're looking for something weak. We're looking for something provable. I like, instead of like weak and strong, I like to say spicy and mild. So we're not looking for a spicy answer. So anything, comparative clinical trials that meet the standard generally present no ethical problems. Absolute, too spicy. So it's implementing those same skills. So let's just quickly go through. Suppose two medical treatments are being compared in a clinical trial for their effectiveness based on the passage. Which one of the following scenarios? Okay, what style question is this? LR question is this? If we're looking for a scenario, like a new scenario that is similar to a principle illustrated in the passage. Parallel. Perfect. Boom. So all of those wonderful things you're learning in bootcamp, all of that hard work that you put into LR, it's all here. I just think they like distort the phrasing to make you upset. Main point, we know how to do that. Community, this is going to be that like method in the reasoning where we take, it's just instead of a whole sentence, we're looking at one word. Following is true, must be true. Author's arguments, third and fourth paragraph would be most weakened, a weakened question. So all of this is attainable. You have all the skills to do it. You just have
that weakened question. That would be an example where we might want a strong answer.
Yeah, so that's weakened, just like in LR, like we are looking for something that is stronger, that is spicy. Absolutely. So yeah, RC's great. It's not as scary as the world makes it seem. Just, you got to walk in with a game plan and know that there are benchmarks to look for. You've got to find a way to engage and make it more user-friendly. And you've got to find a way to do it more in a way that you don't hate, because if you dread it, you're not going to do it. And if you don't do it, you're not going to get any better. And if you don't get any better, then then that just puts too much pressure on your other two sections and you don't want to walk in with that stress. And that's the end of my TED Talk. If we have time, could we do 17? Sure. Okay.
I couldn't figure this one out.
Yeah. Okay.
I missed this one.
Yeah, you're good. Okay. Suppose two medical treatments are being compared in a clinical trial for their effectiveness in treating a condition. Based on the passage, which one of the following scenarios would be significantly more likely to jeopardize theoretical equipoise than clinical equipoise? Okay, so first off, we have to ask, what is this question asking us to do? So we're looking for something that's going to be more harmful to theoretical equipoise than clinical equipoise. What is the difference between the two? Like in very brief statements, like why is clinical equipoise way better than theoretical equipoise according to our author?
Theoretical is way more strict, and they have to be really unbiased.
Yeah, it's structured, it's less strict for over here. So we're trying to do something that's really going to hurt theoretical. We also need more of a consensus. So we know that those are kind of like the buzzwords we're looking for. We're looking for something having to do with consensus. We're looking for like maybe it's impossible to reach consensus or it's impossible for people to walk in without a bias. Okay. The initial results of the trial so strikingly favored one treatment that they were published and widely disseminated before the study was even half over. As a result, most physicians who specialize in treating the conditions came to favor the effective treatment before the trial had ended. Does this jeopardize it? Yeah. Is it Giovanna? I love how you're shaking your head. Absolutely not. That completely goes against, that would be perfect for theoretical equipoise because we have everyone on the same team. Preliminary results in the trial suggest that the two treatments are equally effective in treating the condition, but these results are not reported while the trial is underway, and thus few in the expert clinical community are aware of them. Like, could this be a problem? Maybe, but like, what does this have to do with the difference between theoretical equipoise to clinical equipoise? Like, again, we're looking for one that's going to be way worse for theoretical equipoise, but not clinical. So we can only work with the information we have. So this is when we have to be an idiot sandwich and know that like, I know nothing about what makes a good trial. It's probably not great that not a lot of people in the community know about it. It's probably not great that stuff isn't reported. And it's like, those are probably things that are bad as like a logical person, but I'm not a logical person. I'm an idiot sandwich. And so like, I don't know, that could be great. So we don't have enough information. Okay. Several of the physicians participating in the trial think that one treatment is more effective at treating the condition than the other. In this, they agree with the consensus. They agree with the consensus view. That's pro-theoretical equipoise. We want chaos. We need a situation where they're not all on the same page. So C is out. Okay. Initial results from the trial convince several of the participating physicians that one treatment more effectively treats the condition than the other does. This does not affect their recognition of the lack of consensus, ding, 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 among experts in treating the disease. Okay, D's looking pretty good. We talk about a lack of consensus, like just because they feel that way, there's still no consensus. That's looking pretty nice, but we'll read E. And just as a side note, like when I answer RC questions and LR questions, I like to, if I like an answer, kind of like, what I like to do is I'll choose it. And then instead of maybe saving 3 that I really like, I compare every single additional answer choice to the answer choice I like. So if E doesn't reach my standard of D, then like eliminated. I don't need to go back and reread. I know that I love D. And if it's not better than D, then like, why am I wasting my time? Great. There is consensus among, this is already a loser, participating in the trial that both treatments are equally effective. Get out of town. However, there is no consensus within the expert medical community as to the relative effectiveness. Do we care about the effectiveness? No. They're saying they're equally effective at treating the condition. We don't care about the relative effectiveness. Like it already says there's consensus. Gone. So it's D. So that's an answer, I think, especially in these science passages, they know that a majority of the people reading them are probably not coming from science backgrounds. So I think, and this is kind of, I think, for parallel as well, you need to break, when you're looking for parallel, you need to just break it down to the most simple things. Like give yourself criteria of what you're looking for and make that prediction, because that's going to make it easier to look through the answer choices and not get stuck in the confusing phrasing. Great. Okay. Any final thoughts? I'm sorry we didn't have time to get through all the questions. If you want to complete them on your own, and then you can always email me, I guess. I'll drop my email in the chat, so you can tell me if this worked for you, or if you implement what we learned today into your future reading. That's my personal email, not my Really Grit Consulting email. But if you want to try this in your next reading comp section and email me at Nicole, is that my email? Does that look right? Okay, phew.
I think
I haven't like automatically logged in, so I haven't like had to type it in forever. Okay. Yeah, that's my email. Thanks for verifying.
Seriously, Katie, that was amazing. This was Katie's first time teaching like a live class on her own, even though she's very experienced helping TA boot camp. She's very experienced tutoring people one-on-one, but she just seriously has a knack for teaching. And I just hope that she knows how much we appreciate her.
Oh, stop. Thanks. Any final questions before you all go to bed? Anna, funny, thank you. Thank you for laughing at my jokes. Oh, okay.
If you're interested in tutoring with Katie, you can book a free consult with her. She also does one-on-one tutoring, and I'll put that link in the chat. And she's $35 an hour. But hopefully she'll teach some more classes in the future. You guys can convince her.
Don't put us to bed. We've got to study. Ooh, you bet. You bet. My bedtime was 9, so this is a wild night. This is a wild LSATing night. Great. Okay. That's it. Any final thoughts? Constructive criticism? Thoughts about your day?
If you want, you can go to Google Really Grit Consulting and write us a Google review. Those always help us.
Yeah. Okay. Bye. I don't know. How do you end? Nicole, do you have a motivational ending that you end your classes on?
No.
I feel bad being
like, no, I just let for. Oh, you can stop recording, Katie.
Oh.